Welcome to SVG-TV's news for Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. I'm Triska Campbell with the details. In just under a week, the leading trade unions movements will be meeting with the government to discuss proposals for a possible increase in salary. The SVG Teachers Union, the SVG-TU, and the Public Service Union, the PSU, recently submitted a list of proposals of ways to alleviate the burden for workers in light of the rising cost of living. The proposal followed a budget consultation meeting which was held with workers, organizations, other stakeholders in SVG earlier this year. The meetings aimed to gain feedback and for the organizations to raise any concerns regarding any aspect of the 2022 budget estimates. The unions say they are very much aware of the financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the last volcano eruption, and more recently the war in Ukraine on tensions. The proposals tabled by the union include a salary increase of 10% over a period of 2 years, 4% to be given retroactively from January 2022 and 6% from January 2023, raising the standard of deduction for personal income tax from $20 to $25, temporary reduction of value-added tax from 16% to 10%, as well as a temporary reduction of import taxes on essential items, thereby lowering the cost for everyday individuals who import those items, and lastly, a cap on the cost of fuels. The unions are expected to meet with Minister of Finance on Tuesday, September 6th, to discuss the proposals. Over 600 houses impacted by the eruption of last volcano have been repaired thus far. So said Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, who provided the latest updates received from the Ministry of Housing while speaking on NBC Radio. The Prime Minister also notes that the official handing over for the 27 new houses in Orange Hill will be held tomorrow, Thursday, September 1st.
In the afternoon, we delivered the 27 houses at Orange Hill. I got a report from the Housing and Land Development Corporation, the Ministry of Housing, on Monday, day before yesterday, at a cabinet committee on the economy about the housing situation. About 600 and something, maybe close to 700 houses have been repaired at one level or the other. We have significant numbers still doing, but we're distributing 27 tomorrow, new houses, and work is commencing on another site at Orange Hill, where we have carved out 70 lots, where we're hoping to put 21 houses, and in Sandy Bay.
Amendments to the Alien Landholding Regulations Bill 2022 were passed in the House of Parliament on Tuesday. The bill, which regulates the ownership of lands by foreigners in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, was tabled by Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves. The amendments include changes for persons who will be required to apply for a landholding license. PM Gonsalves says the aim is to limit the categories of persons who are able to acquire lands in SVG.
What we're doing here, in effect, is to narrow the range of exemptions so that you will have to have an alien landholding license if you want to hold property. Now, so this is it. We consider that the category Commonwealth is a Commonwealth citizen who is who's domiciled here and resident in St. Vincent for 7 years, that if that person wants to take advantage of the alien landholding license provision, not to the exemption, that they become a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Simple. And the provision remains for children, naturally, of those who are citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Once you're under the the age of 18. If you are, even though you may be born elsewhere, but once you become 18, you will have to be, well, you at birth you're a citizen of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Once you're of a national, of somebody of St. Vincent and the Grenadines who was born a citizen.
He adds the amendments will allow government to properly manage land resources, and the legislation also includes the provisions for seizure of lands from persons who do not fulfill conditions outlined in the Act.
Some of them, other than being part of the Commonwealth, we really don't have any particular set of connections with one another. And we have limited land. And we feel that if you're coming to buy our land, you should have the alien landholding license. I just want to say that, and in that way, Madam Speaker, if you are somebody who is, if you're having a development program, what it does if you come and buy a property, it means that you will have conditions attached. And if you don't fulfill those conditions, the section of the law makes it plain that 5.2, on breach of any condition in a license to hold land as owner, tenant or mortgagee, the estate and interest of the alien in the land or mortgage held under the authority thereon shall thereupon be forfeited to the Crown. Well, we have always read that thereupon be forfeited to the Crown as being liable to forfeiture. And we, for instance, applied for forfeiture in relation to the 100 acres down at Chatham Bay. And we won that case at the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and at the Privy Council.
In his contribution to the debates, opposition leader Dr. Godwin Friday says the Alien Landholding Regulations Act has undergone numerous changes since its implementation, and he suspects that further amendments will be made in the future. Dr. Friday adds, while the changes will result in more revenue for government, it will also mean additional work for lawyers.
I was very familiar with the legislation and all the changes that have taken place and that were taking place after that, since I was practiced. And I know that changes have been made. The bands that were, the rates that were charged in the license and so forth had been changed, had been adjusted, various arguments were made. And I expect the same will continue, depending on the policy priorities of government of the day. And certainly, the changes that are made here, it creates more work for lawyers and possibly more revenue for government, but I expect that those things would be monitored. I just want to say, though, the amendment and the passage of the Act, the Prime Minister asked about when it becomes effective. I think the advice of those persons, say, giving 90 days is reasonable, but that's up to the government to do, so that people who are making decisions already well and trained have some sense of time to make whatever adjustment they want to do. But that is something, Madam Speaker, that I think would be fair, and since you asked the question, I think that if I was still practicing in the area, that's certainly what I would recommend.
Over 800 students will receive tuition scholarships from the governments of St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the 2022 and 2023 academic year. Speaking on NBC Radio's face-to-face program, Prime Minister Dr. Alf Gonsalves said the process of contacting successful applicants has begun.
The Public Service Commission Training Division is at the moment contacting by email and other means 815 persons who have been awarded tuition scholarships. In fact, Johnny P., maybe I'm trying to see if I can get resources for another 50 or so, because 1,100 and something persons applied. But some of those, of course, who applied and who weren't considered, I'm told, by the authorities, that Some of them didn't have their admission to the university. Some didn't take in all the documentation. You know, some of those cases now. But it's a huge number. And, you know, and I've seen the list, and people are doing all kinds of different subjects. You know, it's a remarkable story. And as you know, last year we did over 700.
The Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries will pursue a program for the national registration of all fishing boats in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Giving an update on St. Vincent and the Grenadines' global fight on illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, IUU fishing, Minister of Agriculture Saboto Caesar says the program is part of the international legal obligation and quest to fight against persons who are engaging in IUU fishing.
Conversations with the technical advisors and the legal advisors from the FAO, and they noted that there is still some work outstanding before we can go to a period of consultation with the stakeholders, because what we are doing here, it begins and ends with the fishers, and we will consult at every turn with the fishers so that we are on the same page. It is very important, though, for all of us to appreciate that there is a page set by international law and that we have to operate within that context. It is anticipated that long before year end that we would complete the consultations with the stakeholders. We are going to go through the different fishing communities and the villages, and we're going to speak to the fisher folk. We are going to explain it to them. The AG's chambers will be there. I hope that if not in person, that the FAO will be able to join us virtually. But this process must be completed.
The ministry received technical assistance from the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, and the IUU Fishing. The Minister of Fisheries thanked the FAO for their support.
The idea at the end of all of this, the great vision, is the removal of the red card, one, and the establishment of a national fleet of tuna vessels that are flagged by St. Vincent and the Grenadines and are owned and operated by Vincentians, and will be landing all the fish right here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for local consumption and also for export. There are several stakeholders very interested in playing different roles, because at the end of the day, we have to ensure that we operate on the economies of scale. And very important to all of this is that we have to meet the international levels for the audits, which are prerequisites to ensure that we are living up to the expectations, the global expectations. At the end of the day, the high seas are the common heritage of mankind, and we have an international legal obligation to protect fish stocks globally.
The minister noted that before the program can be implemented, the national fisheries legislation must be revised.
Critical in the way forward is the revision of the national fisheries legislation, because we have to ensure that the jurisprudence within the country falls in line with many of the international obligations that we have. We have established in this country a national fleet expansion program, and we have started this jointly with the Kingston Cooperative Credit Union. So far, we have 41 applicants for boats and over 50 applicants for engines. And what we have noted to them is that we have to operationalize this program within the context not only of the national policy to expand our fishery, but that we have to do it within the context of our international legal obligations.
The Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment hosted senior personnel from the Caribbean Public Health Agency, CARPHA, this week as a follow-up to insect control training workshop, which was hosted online from since 2020 to 2022. The training, held mainly for Ministry of Health staff, focused on integrated vector management and insecticide-resisting testing. Speaking on the API's morning SVG program today, CARPHA's Senior Technical Officer for Vector Disease Control, Rajesh Raghu, shed some light on some of the areas that staff would have been trained in.
Area 2, with the integrated vector management training, we have been looking at the systems, improving the systems that the vector control personnel use to respond to incidences of high mosquito infestation in the country. So I think most people are familiar with seeing a lot of mosquitoes around, seeing the vector control teams come out and do inspections, seeing fogging machines come around in the communities and doing fogging and spraying. So we're trying to then improve these systems to make sure that when we come out into the communities and we do particular interventions, we do inspections, we treat specific containers, remove containers where we find mosquito breeding, or we come around with the fogging machines and we fog, that these things are effective, right? And that we're actually reducing the incidence or mosquito infestation levels.
Acting Supervisor for the Insect Vector Control Unit, Shamanti Laban, who welcomes the Senior Technical Officer, says he will be visiting with several teams responsible for the fogging program against mosquito-borne diseases.
So he'll be looking at what it is that we do as it relates to fogging, mixing, the way we operate and so forth, giving us technical advice and also identifying gaps in order to improve vector control within St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Speaking of the importance of his recent visit to SVG, Raghu says they are working to protect Vincentians from mosquito-borne diseases.
Because if we have high levels of mosquito infestation, then the threat of arboviral disease transmission, if you have a dengue case, for example, in a community, and you have a lot of mosquitoes, it's going to spread very, very quickly through that community, which means a lot of persons are going to get sick very quickly. So the better we are at managing these systems on the vector control side of things, the better we're able to protect our population and reduce the threat of arboviral disease transmission. But that's a small side of it. The other side is in educating the public, getting persons to recognize where mosquitoes breed, do the necessary interventions on their own as well. There are simple things persons can do. They can remove containers that they see breeding. They can cover their drums so that mosquitoes don't get into the drums and the water storage systems and breed. These are the same containers that will cause mosquitoes to be in and around your home and cause you to get bitten.